For ground-dwelling yellow jackets, hire a professional equipped with the proper gear to handle them safely. Just because you can climb up something doesn't mean you'll be able to climb back down. Living with strangers in shared housing. I did it out of necessity for years, but now that I have my own home, I finally feel liberated. Depression hits hard and takes a serious toll. Don't mess with the ocean. I got swept off a rock by a wave because I was sitting too close to the water. I genuinely thought I was done for and would never be seen again, but the ocean got bored of me and hurled me back towards the rocks like discarded trash. Believing coworkers are genuine friends, LMAO. When money or power enters the equation, people tend to show their two-faced nature. Overworking yourself can be deadly. In my late teens, I spent several years working 80 to 100 hours a week. Eventually, my body just gave out. I woke up in a hospital bed, and it took 6 months before I started feeling even somewhat normal again. Don't attach 2 hyperactive dogs to a razor scooter just to see if they'd make good sled dogs. Driving through standing water is risky. Just because the car ahead makes it doesn't mean yours will. Chainsaws. After an accident that left my leg injured, I can't even stand the sound anymore. Pedestrian safety is critical. I was hit by a car while crossing the street. After CPR at the scene and a coma in the hospital, I had to relearn how to walk and talk. Now I triple-check both directions, even when I have the right of way. As a kid, I learned that geese are the crowned kings of jerks in the bird world. Human resources, HR. I'll never trust them again. Alcohol. I learned my lesson the hard way. The anxiety, depression, weight gain, and apathy created a horrible, endless cycle. I've been sober for 69 days now, though. I already knew not to mess with it, but COVID still hit me hard. I went from climbing and doing 6-mile hikes with my child on my back to needing a cane to walk. On top of that, I developed cognitive issues, had to use a stent for kidney stones for 2 months, which might have caused internal scarring. My asthma worsened drastically, and exercise intolerance led to type 2 diabetes. The good news is I'm a fighter, and after 3 years, I'm slowly bouncing back. Not using hearing protection when needed, tinnitus is awful. Don't cook bacon while naked. It's much easier to lose your way in the forest than you'd expect. One time I wandered away from our campsite while slightly tipsy because I love searching for mushrooms. I kept venturing a little deeper until I turned around and realized I couldn't see my wife or friend back at the camp. I took a few steps left to try and get my bearings, then thought maybe a few steps in another direction would help. And that's when I realized I was completely lost. I shouted for help, but the sound didn't carry. It was sunset when I wandered in, but the forest gets dark much quicker than you think. I panicked and started running, swearing at myself and yelling for help repeatedly. I tried to remain calm but kept moving because the cold and darkness were closing in, and I knew I was in serious trouble if I didn't find a way out before nightfall. After what felt like the longest 90 minutes of my life, I finally heard the rumble of a truck in the distance and sprinted towards it. I nearly broke down when I emerged onto a gravel road about 3 kilometers west of our campsite. Later, when I looked at a map, I realized that if I'd gone any other direction, I'd have been stranded in endless forest. My wife and friend told me they had gone into the woods calling my name, but I must have been too far to hear them. If that truck hadn't been driving along the service road that evening, I honestly don't know if I would have made it out alive. Road rage taught me a terrifying lesson. I yelled at another driver and he chased me while threatening to shoot me. That was the last time I ever shouted at someone behind the wheel. Inverted storm surges occur when a hurricane nears the coastline. The low pressure in the eye pulls massive amounts of water away from the shore, sometimes leaving miles of empty beach. Eventually, all that water comes rushing back with incredible force. Growing up on the Alabama Gulf Coast, I didn't know this as a kid. Once, during middle school, I walked to the beach while a hurricane approached. The water had completely drained, exposing the sand under the public fishing pier, which was normally 8 to 9 feet deep. I wandered out to the end of the pier, curious. After a few minutes, I started heading back. About 2/3 of the way to shore, I felt the ground shaking and instinctively ran as fast as I could. I was around 20 feet from a jetty made of rocks when a massive wave slammed into me, carrying me to the top of the jetty and pinning me there. My sandals were ripped off my feet, but miraculously floated back beside me as I clung to the rocks. When the water receded just enough, I scrambled over the jetty and escaped. Embarrassed, I never told my mom, sneaking into the house to shower and change. Years later, in 2017, I watched footage of people walking into Tampa Bay as Hurricane Irma approached. The memory gave me intense anxiety. Since that day, I've never gone anywhere near the water before a hurricane. Balancing a full-time job and full-time school isn't worth it. I thought I could handle anything if I put my mind to it, but it broke me. I ignored my stress, but my body and brain didn't. I began waking up in the middle of the night with panic attacks, convinced I was dying. I developed agoraphobia, avoiding places like airports and malls because they triggered vertigo, dizziness, and a floating sensation that would spiral into another panic attack. The cycle repeated until I finally saw a doctor, who told me I was overloading myself and needed to stop. He was right. You can push yourself too far, and even if you manage to force your way through, your body and mind will eventually rebel. Stay on top of routine checkups and screenings. Schedule that colonoscopy when it's due. Get a yearly skin exam, and don't skip your prostate check or pap smear. If you've smoked or are at high risk, make sure to get regular lung cancer scans. Talk to your doctor, learn what tests you need and when, and stick to the timeline. I have lung cancer despite being in the 20% of patients who have never smoked. The difference between catching it at stage 1 and stage 4 is literally a matter of life or death. Don't wait for symptoms, and don't delay getting that suspicious mole checked out. Motorcycles. No matter how skilled you are as a rider, you share the road with drivers who make terrible decisions. Private student loans are a trap. No Ivy League school is worth the financial burden. Take the offer with the best funding, whether for undergrad, grad school, or professional programs. The interest rates are outrageous, and the loan terms are absurd. In some cases, not even death cancels the debt. Permanent disability? They still won't care, just don't do it. Pit bulls. My family always loved dogs, and we believed the breed just had an unfair reputation. My dad brought home a pit bull puppy, and we raised her for 6 years. She was well-loved, house-trained, and showed no behavior problems, or so we thought. One day, we came home to find she had killed our elderly Boxer, a dog who had been with her every single day. The Boxer was so old she had no teeth, but the pit bull tore her apart and was chewing on her severed leg like it was a chicken bone. Never again. It makes me sick to see people letting their kids crawl around these dogs. Alcohol. 22 years spent drunk, now 18 months sober. Hiking solo in Iceland with too much confidence taught me a lesson. The most dangerous hiker is an overconfident one. I got lost, didn't bring enough food, and ended up stranded on the side of a mountain. It took 20 people to rescue me. Never again. As a first responder, I advise you, let a professional handle garage door springs. My then wife and I were in the ocean, relaxing on a sandbar. She was lying on a beach raft while I floated us around. Facing away from the shore, I suddenly saw something massive, about the size of a couch, glide by quickly. It hit me immediately. We were standing in chest-deep water in prime shark territory. I told her, let's head in, and started pushing us toward the shore. Whatever it was passed between us and the beach. Then I saw another one, then a third. We still had to cross the deeper ditch to get to safety, and I genuinely thought we wouldn't make it. Thankfully, it turned out to be dolphins, not sharks. I'm a lot more cautious in the ocean now. Customs officers. Don't try joking with them. Just trust me on this one. Always use your right to remain silent. Don't be foolish and run your mouth. If you come across an older man with a saddle nose deformity or cauliflower ears, don't mess with him. A saddle nose, also known as a boxer's nose, is a sign of serious training. An old man with that kind of background could easily kill you. That's how he's managed to live so long.